Hello and welcome to your Canadian Framelines midweek special edition update, finally featuring the photochemical process. I am your host, Ryder White, and so we're just going to talk a little bit about what happens that makes film possible. And this is definitely a simplistic version, both because the details are not particularly necessary and also because I don't understand it completely. I'm learning just like everybody else. Um, but I have gathered a few bits of information and tried to compile them in a way that may be of some interest to you. And now, of course, there are as many photographic processes as there are hairs on my head, so I won't spend time going through them all, but we will talk about the ones that we use most commonly today, and specifically in Canadian Framelines, simply monochrome black and white um, film images. So the talk about the photochemical process has to go all the way back to the beginning, which is to say, we have to talk about photochemical processes that are not related strictly to the art of photography. Photochemical processes are a basic element of chemistry. They have assumed important roles in all manner of biological development. The most well-known example of a photochemical process being used is photosynthesis, in which plants, vegetable life that is, convert carbon dioxide and water into nutrition, some sort of thing. They convert them into oxygen, and that's how they eat. Similarly, our eyes rely on photochemical reactions in order to release chemicals that ultimately provide the impression of sight. And we also make great use of photochemical reactions in vitamin D production in our skin. So all of this underlies the science of image making that we are about to enter. But first, just talk about how the photochemical process is really not much different than any other energy conversion process in chemistry. Heat is another example of an energy form that produces some similar effect. Essentially, in any chemical bond, there is an amount of energy that will break that bond or make alterations to that molecular structure. In the case of gasoline vapor, for instance, enough heat will ignite it. And so light is just another energy form that is used in those reactions. And generally what we speak of in terms of energy requisite interactions is an activation energy, which is a threshold above which the external energy force must proceed before anything will happen. And so this has a great deal to do with photography and exposure, as we will see. So I mentioned before that there are many different photographic processes, and they all sort of use the same basic idea, which is to use a light-sensitive compound. I'm creating a weird thing. This thing is behind my head. Use some sort of light-sensitive compound, and by focusing light rays onto a sheet of this light-sensitive compound, you can produce an area on the compound that has been exposed to light and an area which has not been exposed to light, and by removing one or the other, you can create an image, either positive or negative. So this is called the latent image, and the latent image is the image that has been formed on the chemical emulsion by the light, but is not yet visible because it is not its corresponding part that has not been exposed to light has not yet been removed. So for the history of the photographic process, of course we have to go all the way back to the early 19th century talk about Louis Daguerre and William Fox Talbot, two great pioneers of photochemistry who were working more or less at the same time, yet independently, in France and Britain. They both used the same chemistry, incidentally enough. It was discovered perhaps by Talbot, perhaps by Daguerre, and more likely by Joseph Niepce, that silver salts were light sensitive and robust enough to support the photochemical process. So both independently used silver iodide, and this was aided in many cases by the addition of silver nitrates, which help in the process of exposing silver iodide to light. They bring down that activation energy in order to break the metallic silver out of the silver salt, that is silver iodide. And so silver salts, and particularly silver bromide, which is most commonly used nowadays, are perhaps the most widely used for this process because they have certain weaknesses that are very easy to exploit, even at very small sizes. This is called the Frenkel Defect, and it is essentially a weakness in ionic bonding between different parts of the silver halide. The silver halide is a silver salt. Between different parts of the crystal. So once the activation energy is exceeded, these ions can break off and sort of decompose the molecule, as it were, and turn it into a silver metal, and the other half of the compound, the halide. So essentially, when you expose silver bromide to light, you get metallic silver, which deposits itself in the emulsion, and you also get liquid bromine, which is absorbed by another element of the emulsion surface. And so this metallic silver becomes the hardened, dense part of the image, the latent image, and then what you do after that is you use a variety of chemicals, developing agents, developers, to fix on that that metallic silver, and then you use a fixer, sometimes called a hypo, to remove the unexposed silver halide, silver bromide crystals that still remain. This is what gives you a negative image, as it were. So that's kind of like a really slapdash overview of how that all happens. And I could go into much greater depth, and perhaps I will at some point after reviewing all of the points that I've probably missed in this video. If you have questions or comments, maybe there's things that I could talk more about, or things that I'm wrong about, and you'd like to speak your mind about that, please post in the comments or send us an email or at CanadianFramelines@gmail.com, or tweet at us. I'm at Ryder White, and we'll see you on Sunday. Thanks a lot. Good night.